Welcome, listeners. This is I Don't Know Her, the show where we talk about women you probably don't know, but you should.
And hey, this is Rita. Welcome back. If you guys have still stuck with us, I applaud you. And I thank you. It's awesome.
This is Amanda, and we're glad you're here listening about these women's stories that we find fascinating and hope you do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing well, I think.
I think so too.
Except I have a correction.
Oh, you do? Yes,
that's right. A really big one.
Mm-hmm.
So last week I did the story of Stormy de la Villa, or de la Vie. Yeah, that's how it's said.
De la Vie.
And I said that Stormy had been in a relationship with Diane Arbus, the photographer, and I was completely wrong because that's how it is. Because she was not dating Diane, the photographer. She was dating Diana, a dancer.
Ah, that's even hotter.
It is a little hotter, right?
I like it.
So I just want to clarify that forget anything I said about the photographer, who was a very famous photographer, but who was apparently, I think, married to a man, if I remember correctly, after I looked that up.
And is it correct that she did take photos of Stormy, though?
Yes.
Okay, that's correct.
The most famous portraits of Stormy were taken by this photographer. They just were not in a relationship.
All right. And so, you guys, if you hear anything that we need to correct, we're totally open to that. I think we stated that before, so call us out.
And I'm going to check on this, but if you'd like to email us a correction, you can find us on social media, or you can email us at idon'tknowher@gmail.com. Okay, so why don't you go first?
Okay, so my first person that I'm going to start with is a Latina. Her name is Berta Zerón de García, and she was the first woman in Mexico to obtain a commercial pilot's license, an unlimited public transport license, which I'll go into detail of what that license entails. She piloted a jet airplane, participated in national and international air races, and she became a skydiver. All the first and a woman in Mexico.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah. So she was born in June 23rd, 1924, as Berta Zerón. She was born in a city called Pachuca Hidalgo, which I looked in the region of where it's at in Mexico. And if you know how Mexico kind of looks like that conical shape, it's on the southern eastern side, kind of right before you get to a coastal region. So a little bit like if you think of central Mexico, just go down and go to the right.
What would be like the biggest major city that people might know that they could like
I'd say
themselves?
Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah, and I looked, the state too is one of the smallest states in Mexico. I think there's 38, and it's one of the tinier ones, but has a really dense population. So she lived in the capital, which is Pachuca, and really dense population. And one thing it noted was that it had a really high immigrant population. There was a lot of Jewish people there. There was a lot of Cornish people there, which I was like, where are Cornish people from? So Southwest England.
Like Cornish hens, yeah.
I was like, what's Cornwall? I never heard of that. I didn't know.
You don't watch enough British drama, huh?
I don't.
British period dramas?
Well, I've heard of Cornish game hen. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Fuck. Oh, white people
That's
like their hens. And there's a lot of Italians there too. So I was trying to do a little bit more like in depth of what the region was like, because I wanted to kind of imagine like what her growing up would be. Mm-hmm. It literally only says about her father that her father took her in 1935 when she was 11 years old. He took her to Hawaii. He took her to Hawaii to live for 2 years. Never said anything about her mother. I don't even know if she's still alive. Never said anything about any other siblings. But a lot of times I've been realizing when we're looking up these women, there's so many details you cannot find.
Yeah.
Because it's not written down, it's not recorded, it's not anything.
Because we fucked up history and decided that only men count.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we're doing this podcast.
It's like we basically know what Benjamin Franklin ate for breakfast, but we don't know where her mother is. So he took her to Hawaii, and he took her there for formal schooling. So she actually learned English there, and she started like a formal education. And then they returned to Mexico 2 years later. And when they were traveling, she got to see an airplane that was actually Amelia Earhart's. And it really like hit a note with her. Yeah.
Oh, of course it did, because like I mean,
Yeah. She's a hero.
yeah, she's a hero.
So imagine this young girl, you know, who travels out of her country. She's getting an education. She's traveling back. And lo and behold, she sees this airplane. And it really, really stuck with her. When she went back to Mexico, she completed her high school education and she became a bilingual secretary, which is very, very vital. It's very important. So she worked for, and these companies all still exist. She worked for Canada Dry, which everybody knows what Canada Dry is.
Yeah, I'd like my gin and tonic, or no, actually, my whiskey ginger.
Ooh, that sounds good. And then Ericsson Company, and I looked up what the Ericsson Company was. It's actually a Swedish company for networking and telecommunications.
Yeah. You know what? I know who they are. You know what they made?
What?
Didn't they make? Weren't they the first cell phone makers? Like remember the little Nokias that everybody had?
Yeah.
Wasn't that made by?
It might have been.
I just remember that Ericsson was like the cutting edge technology, and then of course everybody else surpassed them.
Well, they broke through. So she did bilingual secretary duties for Canada Dry, the Ericsson, which is the telecommunications company, and then a money exchange business located in Benito Juarez International Airport. So she got her feet into an airport in that way. The story kind of goes that she met this pilot named Captain Miraz, and he invited her to go on a flight. And she was just a little beside herself, a little shy. She said that the plane didn't look, what is the word she used? It didn't inspire much confidence in her. So probably a shitty ass plane, right? She like,
it's got like loose
girl,
wheels.
I ain't going in there. It's janky as shit.
There's like holes in the fucking wings.
So it didn't inspire confidence. But she admitted that openly that she regretted not taking that flight because she felt like it was something she needed to do. So when the opportunity arose for her to take a position in the Department of the Servicios Aéreos, which is like the air services.
Yeah. I know Spanish.
Yeah. I know. When I was typing all this out, there was so many like this word is spelled wrong. And I'm like, it's Spanish. So when she got that position to be in the airport services, she took it. She was like, I got to jump on this. I got to get my foot in the door.
So was it just seeing Amelia Earhart that like inspired her, or was she interested in flight before seeing that?
She said it was the airplane. She was fascinated by the airplane, the inside of it, the way it looked, and it had always just stuck in her mind.
Okay.
And so she actually, at this time right now, when she's getting these jobs, she's around 18, 19 years old. So this position that she took would allow her to work directly near the hangar, and she got to fly with the company's aircrafts and be an observer. So she really wanted to kind of get a personal look at being in an airplane. She loved being by the planes, but then they transferred her to a department that was in the ticketing department outside the airport, and she quit. She was like, nope.
I didn't sign up for that.
No. So she quit. A few years later, she decided that she was going to take the steps to be a pilot. So she applied for her permit for flight practices in 1947. She's about 23 years old at this time. She completed her first official flight on July 13th in 1947, so same age. Her duration was 45 minutes, which is pretty good. Like 45 minutes of flying is a pretty big deal. So she didn't stop at just getting her private license. That was just like her first taste of that. And she learned how to fly a twin engine airplane, which is obviously more power, a little bit more steady, slightly bigger. She studied instrument and night flying skills too. And then she became familiar with a Beechcraft Baron 5.5, which I looked at that plane. It is small. It's like a 2-seater, like with a little tripod feet. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in one of those?
I just went in one that was a 4-seater.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
You and the kiddo.
Yeah. And my friend Will, he took my son up for the first time in the teeny tiny airplane. And I'm in the back, like sweaty palms. Like you can feel every bump.
You can.
Every little move. Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why I have sort of a fear of flying. Is because my parents thought it would be really fun to take me up in one of those when I was a little girl.
Oh, no.
And it terrified me.
It's scary.
I did not like that. It's just every single bump in the air, like little wind or whatever, you feel like at any moment you could just be tumbling to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, he was trying to explain when I just went into this airplane. I forget what plane it was. But he was like, oh, yeah, these windows just kick out and you can probably just kick this door open, but it's real sturdy. But, if this went this way and that would snap off and that would break and that shatters. And I was like, what the hell?
Hey, this guy's really good. He's like the doctor that's like, you'll probably die, but you might not.
Oh, maybes. Just big maybes. Oh, we didn't die. Yeah. And it was a fun ride. And then she practiced aerobatic flight with a PT-17 Stearman, which I looked at that plane. And it's kind of has like those double stacked wings. Like, have you ever seen the aerobatics where they like tie somebody to the plane and sitting in a chair and they do loop-de-loos?
What?
Have you ever seen that?
Wait, is this like a torture thing?
No, they used to do that for like the circus.
Oh, good God.
Yeah, they would do aerial acrobatics and they were like wooden framed wings with like leather on them. And they would fly really low. You wouldn't go really high, so you could do all those kind of fun tricks and stuff like that.
I'm sure no one died doing that.
Not that I know of, so it didn't happen. So she did that. So at 42, she had logged 282 flying hours. And so she was awarded a commercial aviator's license, number 2525, in 1966. And immediately began working on the Aviones SA company as a flight instructor on a Cessna 150. And I looked at what a Cessna 150 was. I looked at a lot of planes today.
Well, at least I've heard of a Cessna.
I've heard of a Cessna too. And it's the same kind of style. Small aircraft, probably about a 4 or 5 seater. Very small. So around 44, she got intrigued by parachute jumping. And she began, yeah.
Because she likes things that she might die doing. Clearly.
I feel like she's a little bit of a daredevil.
Yeah, I'm getting that.
So she joined a club, which was an all-men's club. She was the first woman admitted to it. It was the Club de, and I'm going to say this wrong, Parasadísimo Deportivo. I don't know, a parachute.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't look at the translation.
I think you know more Spanish than I do, perhaps. Although it is my goal to become fluent by the time I'm 40.
I don't know. That's a good goal.
I know, right?
Yeah.
No, it's like I'm really passionate about it. I really want to be bilingual, at least conversational, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I won't ever be able to like write or read probably much in Spanish, but
conversational would be more important.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be able to. I have my school is becoming more and more Latino that I work at, and the Spanish teacher is a friend of mine now, Ms. Ruiz. And she really wants our library collection to start carrying like novels and stuff in Spanish, so kids who want to check them out have something to read.
You could have something to read.
And we are getting, our population of students is getting to be more and more heritage speakers, which are native Latino, like native Spanish speakers, Latino kids. It's just because our city of Spokane, a beautiful place, is becoming quite gentrified. We're following the path of Portland and Seattle, which means that people are being priced out of the cheaper neighborhoods, and then they're moving to the valley.
Oh, wow.
So, and they're moving to the cheap part of the valley, which is where I work. So we are getting a lot more diversity in our school, which I like.
Yeah.
I'm sure the representative of the valley doesn't like that.
I would honestly love to learn more too, because I can understand more than I can speak. And the longer you don't do the pronunciation, and my mom's even said this, my mom's bilingual, that it's harder to bend the letters. That's why right now I'm not really doing much of an accent, because like I haven't been speaking anything or reading anything out loud, so like your tongue feels weird when you're trying to say it. And yeah.
I have a friend who's an incredible poet. Everybody should check her out, Ariel. She wrote a poem that, well, actually she has a book of poems coming out soon that are getting published, and she wrote this poem that I absolutely love, and it's about how people, especially white people, like cannot say people like words correctly, and they just sort of mangle it. But she has this like really beautiful poem about it that I love, that's like get my name out of your mouth.
Oh,
Yeah.
I like that. That was like The House on Mango Street.
I love
When
that book.
she says that her name was Esmeralda, but when it comes out of a Latino's mouth, it is like clouds in the sky. But when it comes out of a white person's mouth, it's hard as tin.
You know what's so funny? I had a student who came and borrowed that book from the library because her mom recommended it. And I had her in 8th grade. So I'm in high school. I teach high school now. I'm a high school librarian now. It's the best job ever. But I used to teach 8th grade English. And I had this student whose name was Mariana. Every one of her teachers, since she has been a 5-year-old child, has called her Mariana. Mm-hmm. And when she got to my class and I called her Mariana, she was like, "You're the first person who's ever pronounced my name correctly in school."
Nice. That's my niece's name.
Is Mariana?
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
name.
We just call her M though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or unless she's in trouble. Like M. Mariana.
Okay, let's get back to, what's her name again? Berta?
Berta.
Okay,
Yes.
see how I just fucking I just the example of why people shouldn't say these things.
Well, I finally rolled an R on this, so I get some points. So yes, she joined the club. She logged 5 static and 13 free jumps. So I looked at the difference between static and free jumps. A free jump is where your parachute, literally called a D-bag. Yeah. I was like, huh. And then it started making me think, like, why do they call people D-bags then? But that means douchebags. So is a parachute a douchebag? Is that like, and I went down the rabbit hole.
Were you high?
No. It was 6:30 in the morning and I had coffee.
Okay, so you were like delirious. Okay.
Yes. So yeah, it's called a D-bag and it's got like a little line to it, like an umbilical cord. And a static jump is it, if you've ever seen them like hook the cord as they're lining up out the door to jump, like if you've ever seen like video of like soldiers doing that, and you jump and you splay out and the cord stays with the plane and it rips the top off and allows the parachute to deploy. So instead of you
Okay.
pulling the cord, your cord is being pulled when you're leaving the airplane.
Okay.
And then obviously a free jump is you're just jumping with a bag on your back and you're in charge of your own deployment. So she logged in, 5 static and 13 free jumps. For this accomplishment, she was awarded actually a decoration during the first international parachute jump competition in Acapulco, because she was the first woman to finish those jumps and be part of this club. So a year after parachute jumping, it says parachute jumping experiences, so multiple times, she decided to aerial race. She hadn't gotten enough.
Wait, what do you mean? Like race with planes?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. This is like Evel Knievel, but
She likes a rush.
Yeah, she's.
So she did an aerial race, her first race, covering a route from Guadalajara, flying a Cessna 150 XBPAN, where she finished 3rd place, and she was the only woman in the race.
How many planes total did it say?
It didn't say how many planes total.
Because like if she was 3rd out of 3, that would be kind of bad. But if she's 3rd out of like 60, that'd be really great.
True story. So in 1969, after taking part in other races and traveling on Cessnas 411, 320, 401, and 421, seemed to be a plane that she really liked, she left the Aviones and started to work for the School of Aeronautics in Mexico. And she was a flight instructor in that school. The same year, she decided to compete in the U.S. in an aerial competition.
Yeah, get it?
Yeah, she went to an event that they used to host called the Powerpuff Derby, which I've never, or no, Powder Puff. Sorry, I said Powerpuff like the cartoon.
I was like, is that like Powder Puff? Oh, you meant Powder Puff. Okay.
Powder Puff Derby, which is an annual competition for women.
Yeah, I was going to say that means it's all women.
Yeah, so she made it 56th out of 92 competitors. So this is an international competition. So she didn't do too well in that one, but she...
I don't know. I mean, she beat almost half of the other people.
True. She continued to race into the early 70s. And then she put her next kind of ambition into gear, which is Commander Mexicana, which is basically like one of the highest decorations you can get as an aviator. It's an executive pilot and flight instructor. So she had to log way more hours, more practice, more learning. She was honored around that same time, I think it was 73 or 74, no, 73. She was awarded the Silver Icarus, which is an outstanding person in aviation. And after this, she also became a precursor in her gender by flying an officially operated aircraft, which was the Beech Baron 55. So all of these planes that she's flying, women haven't been flying these planes in Mexico. So that's why she's being given these awards. She started to fly and train on a Turbo Commander 680 and 68, and I looked at that plane. It is fly as fuck. It is really cool looking.
Describe it. What did it look like?
It's just really sharp. Like, it's real sleek. It's got a little bit of like some 70s swag to it, where they like kind of stylish. Like maybe you would fly somebody who was important, maybe, you know, diplomat or movie star or something like that. The metal on it's a little chromed out, so it's really pretty. So she achieved that title, Commander Mexicana, flying that plane, and also obtained her unlimited public transport pilot license, which was the first license of its types to ever be obtained by a woman in Mexico. And so I was a little curious about what the ATPL license was. It's the highest level of aircraft pilot certification. Those who have the ATP are authorized to act as a pilot in command on scheduled air carriers, aircrafts under SFR 14 Part 121. Lots of legal jargon there.
Yes, lots of specific stuff that we don't understand.
Yeah, but I was kind of curious of what was required in the testing. She had to know air law. She had to have aircraft general knowledge, maintenance too, so engine-wise. She had to know flight planning and monitoring. Human performance and limitations, so they had to learn some stuff about like anatomy and how people are affected by elevation and all that stuff. Oh. She had to learn meteorology because she had to fly at night, and if your lights go out, you have to follow the stars. Operational procedures, principles of flight, communications, which she was also bilingual, so that was really helpful to her. General navigation, radio navigation, instrumentation, and then mass and balance. So that was everything that she had to do to get this license. Obtaining this license, she got awarded again with an Emilio Carranza medal. And I looked up this dude, and he's like basically the Lindenberg of Mexico. He's like an aviation hero from the 1920s. And he like died tragically in a plane crash. And so they created kind of a
memorial award.
A memorial award for him, yeah. But for aviators in Mexico, it's one of the highest recognitions that you can get. First woman to get that. She was also qualified at the same time to fly the Rockwell Saberliners, which is a business jet. And I looked at that one too. It's another swanky plane. So I think she's like, her tastes were getting a little rich or something.
Well, Rockwell as the name, because it just sounds like it's obviously for rich people.
Yes. And it's a business jet, so. She became the first officer on the Sabre 40 as Commander Mexicana. She got her recognition, and becoming the first woman to occupy that rank in an executive jet airplane. And then in 1978, she was awarded for a second time with the same award for logging 10,000 hours in flight.
Nice.
Which, that's a shitload of time.
Yeah, it is.
So she did have an ultimate goal. She wanted to work for an airline. She wanted, like, from when she started...
A commercial airline?
Yeah. She wanted to work for an airline, so that was, like, her next thing. She's like, okay, I've got these awards. I've got this extra education. She got her commander position. So she left her Commander Mexicana position, actually, to apply for employment for an airline, which was the Aeronaves de Mexico. And she had applied before, and they had always found a reason to not hire her. I wonder why.
Oh, I'm shocked. What year is this?
This is
when she's applying.
1980.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I can
we're
see
old enough to know better.
Yeah, like, we know we should hire women, but, like, I mean, they might be on their periods.
Yes.
And they might crash the plane.
Highly irrational.
Yep.
So they always had an excuse for not hiring her. So she came out with them with her new rank. She had all her training. piloting abilities. She was bilingual. And they told her that if they hired her, they would have a requirement that she needed to retire in 15 years.
What?
Yeah,
Why?
they put a stigma on it because they said that that was as far as she could go. That's as far as they would let her go. And then she would have to stop flying.
How old was she at this time?
1980. So if she's born in 24, she's in her...
Oh, she's like 60 something.
Yeah.
Or almost. So I guess I
she-
could see that. You know, you probably don't want your pilots to be 80. Just saying.
Yeah, she didn't take that lightly. She didn't take the position. That was the one thing she wanted that she didn't get. So it says too, the presence of a woman pilot hadn't happened in any of the airlines yet, so she didn't get to do that. She would have achieved that if they would have let her. So the incident didn't do any harmful effects on her career. Instead, she went on to keep training and flying a C-182, where she won first place in an aerial race in Mexico.
Yeah. Redemption.
Redemption, absolutely. It says that her flying ended in 1996. And then she died.
She was old as fuck.
Yeah, she died 4 years later in 2000.
But she was born in the 20s.
Yeah, she was born in the 20s, so she lived a long time. And she was still flying in
Yeah,
1996.
I'm not sure I would want... I mean, I think it's scary when they're driving.
True.
I mean, I know that's ageist, but like, I've seen my mother.
So yeah, she passed away in 2000. Never made, in everything that I looked at, never made a mention of a husband or children. It was all just about her achievements in her flying career. So I don't know if she was married. The pictures that I saw of her, by the way, she was a cutie. She was all petite and just, I adore her. Like, she had an outfit on that I literally would wear today. With all of her experiences in the sky, allowed her to pilot over 46 different types of airplanes, including military vessels, the T-33s, and participate in two parachuting championships and 8 air races. And there's a quote at the very end from her, which is, "Para mí la aviación es mi razón de vivir, es toda mi vida." It's like, for me, aviation is my reason for living. It is my whole life. I was really enamored with her story. She just wouldn't stop. She's just like, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. I've always had goals, and I'll reach them, but then I'll stop. And I won't continue. And I wish I could pick something where I could just keep going and keep it a joy.
Well, what she does is she just puts the goalpost out farther. You know, she met this goal, so she put it out a little farther after that, and then a little farther after that. That's admirable.
Yeah, very. And especially, like, I'm thinking for, the 40s and 50s in Mexico, how hard was that probably to try to keep up with or not keep up with the men, but having to prove yourself.
Yeah, over and over and over again.
Because I'm sorry, I was raised around a lot of Mexicanos, and they've got some machismo problems. Like,
I've always been curious about the machismo stuff because I am much more familiar with indigenous culture in America, like in the United States. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this change in sort of the idea of prescriptive gender roles and things like that came as a result of colonization. And so I wonder if prior to white people invading every fucking corner of the world, if things had been different, if it had been less prescriptive before, or if that was something that got put on by oppressors and now
that this is your role, this is your role. I would almost seem like it would be after the oppression, because what is the gain of putting someone in a role is for you to benefit off that. So I'm going to put you in here so you can make me this. I'm going to put you over here so you can go build me that. And
I have a tendency to believe, because Mexico prior to colonization was an indigenous land, and so because of my own familiarity with like North American indigenous cultures, like far north, I just assume that there's probably similarities in sort of Central and South American Aboriginal and indigenous cultures, that like there really wasn't this sort of very prescriptive, you're a woman, you do this, you're a man, you do this, and then there the two twain can meet.
Yeah.
Like that was clearly a European sentiment that was placed upon other cultures.
Yeah. It's interesting too that you know, I wasn't raised in a household like that. My dad wasn't, you know, you girls stay in the kitchen or you do this or whatever. It was an equal front in our house. But the community that I grew up in, I always saw a lot of what I would call traditional Mexican families where the women definitely played a subpar role. They were very quiet. They were very meek. They didn't speak much. Their husbands would beat them and beat the kids. And I saw it so many times where it was just kind of a house run by fear. And like that, the children were just terrified of making dad upset, and mom was terrified of not having, you know, dad's stuff ready. I never understood that. And it was a lot of just like a toxic male domination. Yeah. My father was never like that. And I'm not doing a blanket statement either. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I did see a lot of it. So I'm imagining for her going at it in Mexico in the 40s and 50s, that had to be seriously hard.
All right, you ready for mine?
Yes.
Okay. I did someone who also was not American.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'm glad we have like a little theme
We always
going
run on the same thread, kind of.
I know. It's like we're connected telepathically, which I like. So my woman is a woman named Naziq al-Abid.
Ooh.
And
I don't know her.
I'm sure. I will tell you
How
that.
pissed would you be if I was like, oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Naziq.
I totally know who that is. So I got inspired to research about her because I had been looking at a book that I just got into my library, and it's called Brazen: Rebel Ladies from Around the World.
Oh, okay.
And it's about it's told in graphic novel form, so it's like in comic style. And it's women who defied the odds, defied expectations, and did incredible things around the world. Mm-hmm. And so the woman that I chose from this is a Syrian woman who was exiled probably, I think, 4 or 5 times in her lifetime. The first time
gosh.
when she was like 12.
All right.
Okay.
Bring it. Yeah, let's hear her.
All right. Naziq was born in 1898 in Damascus, Syria, to a family of wealthy merchants during the time of the Ottoman Empire. Full disclosure, I had to quickly Wikipedia the Ottoman Empire because I could not remember. I was like, I remember that from like 8th grade, right?
You remembered it at least.
Well, I remembered that it had something to do with Turkey, and that and so basically, I'm going to give you the very quick rundown of it because I think it's important to understand.
Okay.
So the Ottoman Empire was it was the largest, like almost all of Europe and parts of Asia, all under one empire. It's like the second largest empire behind the Romans. And it lasted for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So basically, all of these countries like Syria, Iraq, Egypt, all of them are under this control. They're all one big empire for a long time. So at the time that she is born into this family in Syria, they are still under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. Her father was a man named Mustafa Pasha al-Abid. He was a Syrian aristocrat, and they were wealthy. They were aristocrats, high society people, very high up in the control of the country.
Okay, so she probably had a pretty nice lifestyle.
Very much so. And her father was in the court of the Sultan Abdul Hamid II. So under the court of the Sultan, her father, Mustafa, was asked to lead an envoy in Mosul, Iraq.
What's an envoy?
Like a group of people.
Okay.
To go into Iraq for whatever reason.
Okay. I'm
not really sure what the purpose was. But while she was in Mosul, she went to school.
Okay.
And she's Syrian. And so she goes to this school in Mosul, and there are Turkish teachers. Because, again, the Ottoman Empire, right? So they're the people who rule in the Ottoman Empire are the Turks.
Okay.
So all of the schools are under the direction of the empire. So all of the teachers are Turkish. And so in her school in Iraq, the Turkish teachers were discriminating against the Arab students.
Oh, no.
And she decided that this wasn't cool with her. So she led a massive protest to get the teachers fired.
Oh, my gosh. How old is she at this time?
Like 10.
Oh, my gosh.
So
That
she leads
is
this student
bold.
protest to get these teachers fired. And of course, that doesn't go well.
No.
It results in her being kicked out of the school and kicked out of Mosul. And her entire family is exiled from the country
From the country?
of Iraq. Yeah.
Shit.
So she gets sent back to Damascus. And when she gets back to Syria, she starts writing articles for local magazines.
Oh, wow.
Like she's like 12, 13 years old. She's quite young.
Yeah.
And she's writing these articles that are criticizing this group called the Committee for Union and Progress, CUP, for militarizing the Ottoman Empire.
Oh.
So she is also arguing in her articles that the senior government positions should be equally divided so that Arabs are represented in the government instead of it being all Turks.
She sounds really educated for being so young.
Yes,
Do you think that was like a result of her being wealthy?
I think so. At one point, it talks about her having tutors. And
Okay.
I think she must have had a hard time staying in school because she was, I think, quite outspoken. And I think she had the privilege of being outspoken because she came from a wealthy, powerful family.
I was going to say, that kind of comes hand in hand.
So in 1914, at the age of 16, Naziq met up with some like-minded women and they started a women's rights group. And she was advocating for women to get the right to vote, and she wanted Syria to assert its independence from the Ottoman Empire, which is basically like a civil war, kind of. You know what I mean? Like, it's an act of war to say you want your country to defect from this empire.
Mm-hmm.
So her group that she started becomes linked to an underground Syrian resistance group that's working towards independence and working against the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
And of course, the Ottoman Empire is not going to be happy about this. And there was this military governor of Damascus, and his name was Jamal Pasha. He specifically targets her and her group, and he outlaws her activities, and he exiles her again.
Oh, jeez.
So she ends up in Cairo, Egypt.
Okay.
So during this time, like all of this stuff is happening, she's still being educated. She ends up with private tutors. She studies literature and she becomes fluent in Arab, Turkish, French, and German.
Oh, wow.
And she attends the Women's College in Istanbul, where she earns a BA in agriculture.
Huh.
Which kind of threw me.
Yeah,
I was like, she's really into
question mark?
politics and
Yeah, so
it's like
why-
agriculture?
Agriculture.
Okay.
Was she trying to, I don't know, like a maybe region betterment or something like that? If
yeah, I wonder if she had some kind of like, oh, once we have independence, I want to do this thing.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she never gets, to do that. The Ottoman Empire then falls in 1918. At this point, Naziq can return to Syria.
Okay.
And she immediately begins giving all of these public speeches calling for equal rights for women. And she specifically is trying to gain the right to vote. She wants women to be able to vote. Now, this is 1918 in Syria,
Yeah.
which we think of as somehow we're superior. But women didn't get the right to vote in America until 1920.
Oh.
So she's right on track.
Kind of right on the same vein. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's calling for women to get the right to vote in Syria.
Or I should say the same end of the rope.
But it was not very popular, just as it wasn't here.
Yeah.
In fact, there was this guy whose name was Ahmed Koumani, and he was a high-ranking government official, and this is what he said at the time about having a woman vote. God created her with half a mind. How can we give her the right of political decision-making?
What?
He literally believed that women had half of the amount of brain as
That
a man.
men do? Wow.
I was like, maybe you're the one who needs to go back to school. Maybe you shouldn't be able to make decisions.
Yeah.
So in 1919, she's 21 years old.
So young.
I know all of the stuff she's done so
Just
far.
so young and so fierce. Yeah.
She's not even like, I mean, I was like barely able to put pants on.
I was 21 and was trying to get, discount shoes.
Yeah.
To go clubbing.
At 21, I was like barely functional as a human being.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So at the age of 21, and I'm going to butcher the name of this, she founded this organization called Noor al-Faya, which translates to Light of Damascus.
Oh, wow.
Which was the first large women's organization in Syria. That same year, she was picked to be the head of a delegation of Syrian women who met with this commission called the American King Crane Commission, which had been dispatched to Syria by President Woodrow Wilson.
Huh.
America, at the time, it's complex things that we're not educated on as Americans.
Yeah.
It had something to do with, after the Ottoman Empire fell, I guess the French saw an opening and they wanted to control Syria. There was all of this like sort of international hubbub about this. Mm-hmm. And so
kind of a grab.
The president of the United States created this commission called the King Crane Commission to try to sort of suss out whether or not France should be allowed to do this.
Okay.
That's basically what I could gather.
Mm-hmm.
So at this meeting, which was obviously being covered by international news organizations and photographers, and there were Americans there and French there and Syrians there, she does something that is shocking. During the meeting,
what does she do?
She takes off her veil, which was a hugely bold move.
Yeah.
And it signaled her desire to move toward a secular, liberal Syria. So she was very much like, nope.
No.
Taking it off.
We are on the same stage.
She was really well known for this. This was like a big deal. It made the cover of the news all over.
At the time, was this like, is it against the law?
It didn't seem like it was against the law, but it was against tradition.
Okay.
Very much against tradition.
Frowned upon.
Yeah. And especially by the more conservative Syrians who had
definitely a rebellious act.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was hugely rebellious. And to do it in front of the Americans was also like really big deal.
Yeah.
Because everybody knew that her doing it in front of them would mean that everybody in American news and American stuff would see it. Mm-hmm. The French would see it. And it would be like, you can't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole reason she agreed to do this commission was because she wanted to convince them that Syria can make... There was this whole thing about how it might be good if the French took over Syria because, it's restrictive and this would give people more rights. And she was like, I can do this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this. I am here and I am already doing this. So that's what I think was the goal of what she was doing, was to point out that women were making their own strides on their own in Syria, and they didn't need some white guys to come in and help them.
Yeah.
In 1920, the next year, she started a magazine that was based on her women's rights group, and she became its editor-in-chief, and then she also founded a women's club, like a place for women to go.
Okay.
And this was at a sort of rocky time in Syrian history. Naziq becomes a close associate of the leader of Syria. His name was King Faisal I. The French at the time are trying to take over Syria.
Mm-hmm.
So Naziq and a lot of Syrians were vehemently opposed to this. They did not want French rule. They had just gotten out from underneath this Ottoman Empire rule, so they wanted to rule themselves. They wanted Syrian people to rule Syria.
It's not asking a lot. Yeah.
Pretty reasonable. When I say French were trying to take it over, I mean they had started to invade Syria.
Oh, jeez.
Like, it wasn't like they were done. That's what this whole King Crane Commission was about, was like whether or not like America and other nations should get involved and protect Syria from the French. And they kind of basically decided no. So the French are like in Syria. They're taking over shit. And in July 1920, Naziq volunteered to serve in the Syrian army.
Oh, wow.
So on the way into the Battle of Mazalon, she was dressed in a full soldier's uniform from head to toe. In front of all of these news cameras, there's international news from all over the world there. On the way in, she's dressed in this male soldier's uniform, and she unveils herself in front of everybody.
Oh, wow.
And it shocked Syrian conservatives and it made headlines across the world. And it was this just incredible image of her riding into battle without her veil on and in full soldier's uniform. In a real battle. Like, we're not talking about, like, you know, skirmishes. Like,
this was actual war. Yeah.
And this was the battle. The battle was catastrophic. It resulted in the defeat of the Syrians. And it's said that Naziq was the only survivor. King Faisal honored her and made her an honorary general of the Syrian army. And she was nicknamed, of course, by the Americans and other European papers. She was nicknamed the Joan of Arc of the Arabs because of this image of her going into battle without her veil. Mm-hmm. So when the French won, King Faisal was overthrown, which meant that Naziq was exiled again. Oh, God. So at this point, she takes...
She just doesn't unpack her bags anymore. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, don't get too comfy.
Yeah.
So she's exiled again, and she takes up residence in Istanbul this time. So she returns to Syria again in 1922, and she says that she's giving up on politics. She's going to focus on humanitarian work.
Okay.
She sees a need because obviously at this point, fighting the Ottoman Empire, then fighting the French, there's been a lot of decimation of people. Mm-hmm. A lot of war-torn stuff.
Price paid,
happened. Yeah. So she starts an organization called the Red Crescent. And it was an organization modeled on the International Red Cross. And it was dedicated to caring for the sick and wounded in war.
Oh, wow.
Eventually, it merged with the Red Cross. But, like, it became its own really huge organization in the Middle East for a long time, which she started.
That is crazy.
So she said she was giving up those politics.
She might have been, I could imagine, like, after that, probably seeing some of the things that she saw, she might have just needed a moment and, like, back down, say, I'm not doing this anymore, and then...
My guess is she said she was giving up politics so she could come back.
Okay.
Because it's her home. She wants to be in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1924, she teams up with, I think, another Syrian woman. This was hard to figure out. Named Adila Beham. And a Lebanese women's rights activist named Labiba Thabet. If I'm butchering these names, please reach out to me and let me know how I should have said them. And they decide to found an organization called the Women's Union, which was supposed to be just about, like, empowering women and things like that. But really, underneath the surface, she's part of a resistance movement against the French.
Oh, my goodness.
And she takes part in a Syrian revolt in 1925. And at this point, she's leading the life of an outlaw. She's in hiding. And what she's doing is smuggling food, munitions, and caring for the wounded on Arab Mountain, which is where everything is being fought. Mm-hmm. Naziq and Beham start another group called the Damascene Women's Awakening Society, and that focused on training and educating women, most of whom were widowed because of the war. And Naziq is kind of an exception, right? She was very well educated and was fighting for women's rights and things like that. But just like in America, there weren't a lot of opportunities for women. Mm-hmm. So that's what she was doing. She was like, now all these women are left to fend for themselves because all these men are dead. Mm-hmm. And they don't know how to do anything because we're not allowed to educate and train women in actual anything. Things. Yeah. So that's what her and Beham were doing. Because of her work with the underground, though.
Yeah.
Can you guess where this is headed?
A little bit.
The French take out a warrant for her arrest, and that results in her fleeing Syria yet again. She leaves Syria in 1927, and unfortunately, she never gets to return.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
She moves to Lebanon and marries a man named Mohammed Jamil Beham, and I was like, is he related to Adila? The other? I don't know. They have the same last name, but I couldn't figure that out.
Is that like Smith? I don't know.
I don't know. I was like, is this a really common name? I don't know. So she marries this man, Mohammed Jamil Beham. He is a former deputy from the Syrian National Congress. Ooh. And he had lobbied for women to get the right to vote. He believed in all of her causes, and he financially supported her work.
That's amazing.
I know. I was
Yeah, especially for the time and yeah.
Literally, it's maybe 1930.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we're not talking about it's 1990 and they need to get on the board, right? Like, he's still like, it's a bold move.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
In 1935, she founded the Association for Working Women in Lebanon, and it lobbied the government to allow sick days for women workers, paid maternity leave, and equal pay. Girl
gets shit done. I like it.
Yeah, so she's going to the Lebanese Congress and being like, you need to pay women. You need to give us sick leave. We need to have maternity leave. Then, I don't know if you know much about the Middle Eastern history, but like, so it was 1935 when she founded this organization in Lebanon. Then World War II happens, right? Holocaust.
Oh.
And then all of these Jewish refugees from Europe move to the Middle East and claim Israel as a home.
Yes.
Which starts a war that's still going on.
Exactly.
But the original war was called the Arab-Israeli War. And following the Arab-Israeli War, she creates and chairs the Association for Palestinian Refugee Employment in Beirut.
Oh, wow.
And she served as its president until her death in 1959. And in addition, she also helped finance a hospital for children and served on its board of directors until her death.
Wow, she never stopped.
No, she didn't.
She didn't stop.
Till the day of her death, she was fighting for the underserved, for women, for children, for refugees. I found her just incredibly inspiring and fascinating. So that's Naziq al-Abid.
That's amazing. And too, like her coming from a place of, I'm imagining she had a lot of opportunities and she could have gone a completely different way, but to advocate for the lesser is amazing. She didn't have to do that.
No.
Nope.
I love people who do that, who use their privilege and their power to help others. It's so important. FYI, I got some of my information from a book. I could read the excerpt of the book that was about her. And the book is called Steel and Silk, Men and Women Who Shaped Syria, 1900 to 2000, by Sami M. Mubayed. I also found this really cool website, which I might use again in the future, called Rejected Princesses.
That's my new band name.
I also used a little bit of Wikipedia and a blog by someone named Nadia Humana.
All right.
So I hope you enjoyed our stories about Naziq.
Oh, and to reference where I got Berta's information, it was mostly Wikipedia and through a website which was Mexicana Historia, which was, it's just a really wonderful website for Mexican women's history.
Sweet.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed our stories about Naziq and Berta.
And look up some of those airplanes. They're pretty legit.
You know what? We'll put some up on the social media.
Right. Yeah, that'd be great. And also would love to include some photos of her.
I'm trying to track down the photo that was all over. It was on the cover of the New York Times. So I know I have a subscription to the New York Times because I'm bougie like that. And I know how to search their archives. I'll find it and I'll put it on.
That would be great.
I'll put it on our Facebook page.
Yeah, I would love to see what she looks like.
Yeah, we'll do an Instagram here soon.
Alrighty.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Tune in next time.